Hey, everybody, I'm Randy.
I'm Steve.
All right, salute.
Salute.
Thanks for joining us. Oh, that beer's good. I needed that. Steve and I are going to be discussing 1 Samuel again via Zoom because I'm still in Florida. We're going to jump into this. This is Steve. You want to explain the books?
Sure. Well, I'm not going to explain the books too much, but yeah, if you're reading through the Bible, especially we're using the NIV version, and we're reading on a Bible app. So it's a great app. Please look, download it and follow along with that. But it has an intro to every section that you're going into. And this notes that the book of Samuel is actually 4 parts, but it's broken up into 4 parts. Samuel, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, and then there's 2 kings.
Right.
We're going to go through half of 1 Samuel, but as Randy and I were discussing, there's some detail there that we didn't want to overlook and drag it on longer. We know we're
Some of our videos are getting up to an hour, so
yeah, we talk a lot. I know I do. So with that note, Randy, once you dive in, or I dive in, it doesn't matter. You want me to?
1 Samuel, verse 1. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, Zuphite, is that how you'd say it? From the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah. I'm not going to say his father's name, but he's the son of somebody, Jeraham.
Yes,
He had 2 wives. His wives were named Hannah and Peninnah. So every year he would travel with his family to worship. I'm assuming at the temple. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah, I believe it's in his hometown.
And his one wife had
in Shiloh. I'm sorry. We'll get to that.
Peninnah had a bunch of kids, and Hannah had 0 kids. Sort of assumed that she would never have children, and obviously she was very down about that. So when they were at the temple, she prayed to the Lord, and the priest there, Eli. We've heard about Eli before, correct?
I believe we have.
Yeah, Eli, a couple of sons that are also priests. He overheard her saying a prayer. She just sort of saw her lips moving, but didn't hear any words. He thought maybe she was drunk, but he approached her and found out she wasn't drunk and just asked her, what did she pray about, or why was she upset, or I can't remember that part.
Well, he thought she was drinking out front of the tent, and he was, because she hasn't had a kid. They know that. Back in the days, and I'm going to add some stuff that to the parts we're talking about now. A woman's value from that judgment was having kids, right? And it's interesting because even Elkanah, who favored Hannah because she was barren, he said, isn't my love worth 10 kids? So he loved her and favored her. And also another thing that I thought, again, this is because polygamy, the 2 wives, and the other wife, Peninnah, she would ridicule her and make fun of her for not having kids, and that's horrible.
Yeah.
So when they go every year to this pilgrimage, and I'm correcting it, I believe it's Shiloh. We'll learn later, and I'll correct it if it's not. She was sobbing. I mean, she's upset, and so she was praying, but it would be understandable because she was barren. That maybe she was a drunkard. I don't know. So that's when Eli approached her, and
they also described, and maybe it's not the first time they've done this, but they've also described these wives as being rivals. Seems like a horrible situation to be in.
Yeah, could you imagine that? I mean, not only you have to share your husband, but now you have to share him against your possible enemy.
So in verse 11, Hannah made a vow saying to the Lord Almighty, you only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son that I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. No razor will ever be used on his head.
Yep.
And when she, Eli had approached her and whatnot, he basically blessed her and said in verse 17, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked him.
Yep. Yeah, and it was important to note, as we learned before, Eli is a high priest, right? So he's in favor with, or she's talking with God, so he did wish her whatever she prayed for would come true. So I think that I got the feeling that definitely encouraged God to allow that. And then, also a side note, I picked this up from something I noted, but it wasn't. I didn't really pay too much attention until I read it in the Bible for Dummies. A lot of the famous women, or the women that have kids that are amazing, were barren at once. So
Okay.
yeah,
See,
remember
now-
Isaac? They didn't have Isaac. Sarah didn't have Isaac, and that's one. And there's a couple others leading all the way down to Jesus, not really barren, but was a virgin. So yeah, there's
Was was he also considered the leader? Was he the leader at that point, or some sort of a leader?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was a high priest within. I'm not certain who the leader. I think right now they're leaderless.
Right.
We left that on there as leaders. He was still. So it was the priest line was the leaders, and then they went into kind of the priest line. You know what?
I sort of thought
I'll correct it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, because the next person that comes along after Eli, they describe as the leader, whatever that means.
Yes.
Whatever that
So
means. So
he's probably just a high priest. I mean, I don't think he's the judge, because the leaders, the judges, as they're called, we learned in the last book, they had the priests with them too.
right now, God is supposed to be their king if they would let him. So
yeah.
So after that, they traveled back home, and when they got back home, they made love, Hannah and her husband. She became pregnant. A little later on, gave birth to a boy named Samuel. And then they said after that, because I asked the Lord for him. So Samuel has something to do with that, because I asked the Lord, maybe.
Yep, and I have it somewhere, but I'll probably never find it because, as
I
again, my notes are not messy. But yes, so it's she did have a son. Actually, I think it's on my first page.
So we move on. Hannah dedicates Samuel. So now a whole year has gone by. So Samuel would be, not that old, really. 9 months. So he'd be 4 months, maybe 3 months, maybe. And her husband, they're traveling back a year later to the temple.
Okay.
So they went home 9 months. She has a baby. Yeah, so this kid would be about 3 months. Her husband is going back to the temple with the family, and Hannah said to him, she's going to stay behind. She wants to wait till the boy is weaned, and I will take him, represent him before the Lord, and he will live there always.
Yeah, so they assumed that the weaning is 3 to 6 years old, so she stayed back every year to take care of her son.
Oh, okay. See, now, right. It wasn't specific, because shortly after that, it says after he was weaned. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I think that's important, because you can't just drop a 3-month-old and expect them to start preaching, right? Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I wanted, so we're going to Levi a little bit, but I also want to set up a little bit of important about from chapter 1 still that I've got out of it, was the fact that Eli's boys were wicked. And it's Phineas, and I can't think of his name. I know we'll discuss it, but if they did some bad stuff. They would basically, traditionally in that day, from what you would take a 3-pronged fork, it reminds me of a devil's spear, and you would jab it, the priest would jab it into the boiling pot of meat in water, and whatever came out was their share. These boys didn't do that. They're like, I don't want boiled meat. So they would take the best cuts for themselves. And then we learned a while back, they were having sex with women at the temple of temple of worship. I mean,
I do have to correct you though. That comes after Hannah's prayer, which is chapter 2.
I have it in verse 112, Eli's wicked sons.
I'm not back on the King James.
No, I know what I did though. I gave away the second. The first part was they would take the raw meat from people instead of the traditional boiled meat. So you're probably right about the second part. So yes, you're right. So we don't learn about the nastiness with the ladies till after. So so go on.
Well, we're at the end of chapter 1, basically. She takes the boy And she actually approaches Eli and says, "Pardon me, my lord." This is verse 26. "As surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I've asked for. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life, he will be given over to the Lord." And he worshiped the Lord there. So we're talking about Samuel. He is now at the temple, and he will become a priest under Eli.
And Randy, go ahead. Well, I wanted to say you're absolutely right. My notes said 112, it was chapter 212.
No problem.
I just want to make sure, this is a discussion, so folks out there, bear with us. We,
Sure.
my notes are, Wade. And
Well, we're there now. So, I mean, chapter 2 starts with Hannah's prayer. So basically, Hannah's prayer is a testimony of God's handiwork in her own life, but it's also a foreshadowing of his actions, the lives of the prophet Samuel, King David, and the nation of Israel. So Hannah just basically recites or sings this poem song that she wrote for the Lord. Of course, if you read, we're not going to sing it or recite it, but if you read, you can read it for yourself.
Thought you're going to take a crack at it this time.
No. My singing voice is a little off tonight. Maybe maybe a few of these, but I'm only having one. So
yeah, me too.
So I'm at verse 11, chapter 2. Elkanah, was that her husband?
Yeah, Elkanah. Yeah.
Yeah, they went home, and the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli the priest. Did I ever say that?
You did not. No, you did not.
Now we're at Eli's wicked sons. This is still chapter 2. Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. Now, after this, they give a lot of examples. You want to go into any of those, Steve? You talked about the meat.
Yeah, I mean, well, and they were bullies too. I mean, basically, the people were like, "You can't do that." Like, they'll just take it. They took it by force. So that, they're wicked. I mean, they're scoundrels and wicked.
And they were also priests at this point.
Well, they were his assistants, and I think we'll learn, that's not good for Eli.
Right. And later on, we'll learn, I think it's coming up not too far away, but the Lord's not happy because Eli is not disciplining his sons. He's letting them get away with this.
Yep, that is correct. And I think we all, humans, we get away with a little bit of that with our kids. So
chapter 2, verse 17, "The sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt."
Exactly. They were blaspheming, in my opinion, because they're not doing,
Absolutely.
We read what number Deuteronomy. All that was on how to eat your food. That was there specific reasons for it, and it was exhaustive. And they're just saying, heck with that. I like the way it tastes better. Fortunately, today Jesus saved us, so Randy and I can eat bloody steaks with fat on them.
So in verse 22 is where they talk about Eli's sons sleeping with the women who were serving at the entrance of the tent. I imagine that's probably a big no-no, tent of meetings. And basically, Eli said to his sons, if one person sins against another, this is verse 25, God may mediate for the offender. But if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them? So that's kind of a good point there. Just letting the kids know, hey, you need to get your act together here.
Yeah, but he still doesn't do anything.
No.
Yeah, because it is okay.
What could he have done? Give him a whooping? These are older men at this point, I think, or early young men.
Yeah, well, it does mention somewhere either 22 or 23 of chapter 2 that they didn't listen, and I'm paraphrasing, as it was God's will to put them to death. So,
Right.
That's part of the, it gets step away, but.
And we'll learn a little bit just down the road here a little bit that Eli also benefits from some of the choices that his sons made. So that's not good either. No. It's one thing for your sons to be wicked, but and you're against them being wicked, but at the same time, he gets a little some benefit from
it. Yep. And then
we're there. Prophecy against the house of Eli. Now a man of God came to Eli. This is what the Lord said. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to verse 29. Why do you scorn my sacrifice and offering that I prescribed from my dwelling? Why do you honor your sons more than me by fattening yourselves on the choice parts of every offering made by my people Israel? That's a big no-no.
Yeah, and we learn it's not super important detail, but and it's later on too. But I think your point earlier is Eli does benefit because he gets fattened by this. I mean, he's eating the good meats, and more than he normally would because they're taking what they
Right.
want. So,
So
but
obviously he was in the know on that, right? Because his sons went and got it, but
yeah,
he wasn't
and
known.
this is kind of a theme I've gotten. I mean, we're only covering the first 8 chapters, but we read the first 15 and decided it was good to break it up. But we'll see this theme where they're just not satisfied with God and listening to God. That's
No.
and it's kind of the theme of the Old Testament. Go for a while, but this time, like I said, he's the high priest. He should know, and these guys know the rules, and they're still not. So
We've seen God lose his patience before, and we're really going to see it coming up here. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me, those who honor me, I will honor, but those who despise me will be disdained. So again, he's referencing Eli's family, Eli and his family.
yes,
Although good will be done to Israel, no one in your family line will ever reach old age. Oh boy. So basically he's saying, okay, so Eli's got a lineage, right? He's got a family. Those
oh
that
yeah,
want to honor me will stay in the priesthood. Those who don't will be set aside. They won't reach old age. Their sight will fail them. A bunch of other nasty stuff. Die in the prime of their lives.
exactly, and not yep, we're going to learn about that exactly how it happens. So
Right.
and so we do get to Hophni is the other son of Eli. So it's
Mhm.
Hophni, and I'm calling it Phineas. So
That's good. Yeah, verse 34. We're getting towards the end of chapter
yeah,
2. And what happens to your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be assigned to you. They will both die on the same day. So we're going to learn more about that coming up chapter.
exactly.
So not good. The Lord
Not good.
called Samuel. I wonder how old Samuel is at this point. They really don't kind of tell us any of that, him growing up and whatnot. The boy
No,
Samuel ministers before the Lord under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. So God really wasn't reaching out and talking to no prophet. He wasn't communicating with anybody.
so I yeah, because this is yeah, because this is I thought that was significant, and there's a word for Steve, or maybe that's a drinking word for those that are drinking
Yeah.
non-alcoholic beer. Because I say a lot of drink words, but that you could drink to. So make sure it's non-alcoholic beer, or you get drunk. Anyhow, yeah, he's living in the temple, or not in the temple, but they're in the temple and they're finished for the day, and they're laying down to sleep, and they're in separate areas, and Samuel hears him being called. He startles, runs over, and goes to Eli. Yes, did you call me? He's like, boy, it's not me. You're snoring or
Mhm.
something. I'm here making fun of it, but in reality, he said it wasn't me. So he
Right.
goes back, and later on, same thing happens. He runs to him again, and so that's why I'm trying to bring it up, and I'm not doing a whole lot of justice to it. It took till the third time for Eli is like, whoa, I think I know what this is. This is God calling you. So he said, this time, go back, lay down. And when next time he calls, you say, here I am, your servant is here, Lord, or my Lord. And again, paraphrasing it. So
Yep.
that was big, because I don't think we've heard, even in the last few judges, I don't remember them specifically talking to him.
Right. Yep. So we get up to right. Samuel says, "Speak, for your servant is listening." So he's having his communication with God. Verse 11, and the Lord says to Samuel, "See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears about it tingle." Verse 12, at that time I will carry out against Eli everything I spoke against his family from the beginning to the end, for I told him that I would judge his family forever because of the sin he knew about. His sons blasphemed God, and he failed to restrain them. Therefore, I swore to the house of Eli, the guilt of Eli's house will never be atoned for by sacrificing or offering. There's nothing they can do. So,
Yeah,
Steve, in reading that, there's nothing they can do. is God saying that Eli's damned?
Well, I'm not certain if they're damned. I just think that their lineage is done. His rule is over, because you remember he's doing, and I don't know if it's just the authors of these books now, because remember we learned about Moses and Aaron, they did far less, and God,
Right.
took
Right.
them early. So these guys are doing far worse. So I mean, I don't think they're damned. I mean, I think they're in heaven. I just think that your time on earth is over with.
He never talks about, or they never mention Eli's sons repenting in any way. But Samuel seemed like he continued to be the way that he was, honoring the Lord, and he carried out his duties at that point. So
Remind me of Joshua, Moses's right hand man. So he's he was dedicated. He's taken his, he's taken it. I mean, he does everything he wants. I mean, he will find out through this book that we've read so far that he's there. He's still there.
right. So the next morning, they both wake up, and Eli, well, of course, wants to know what God told him, right? And it's not good. So Samuel reluctantly, says to Eli, I'm sorry, I lost my place or my place. So it just says that, so Samuel told him everything, hiding nothing from him. And then Eli said, he is the Lord, let him do what is good in his eyes. So Eli accepted it pretty graciously there.
Yeah, I don't think he was shocked. Yeah, I said, he is the Lord, let him do what is good in his eyes. That's I think chapter 18 and sorry.
I mean, that's an honor to the Lord. He didn't get upset. He didn't start cussing and swearing. He didn't say, I'm done with the priesthood. I mean, he basically just honored what the Lord had said.
Yeah, I mean, he does. Eli, I think, is a good man. He just, like we all do, we fall victim of not taking care of, sometimes our kids were being,
And that's a reoccurring theme we're seeing over and over and over again with all these people. So we're on to chapter 4, and Samuel's word comes to all of Israel. The Philistines capture the ark. Yeah, this one really kind of shocked me.
Yeah.
So we're getting into some battles here. The Israelites went out to fight against the Philistines. Now, the Philistines were oppressing Israel at this time.
Exactly.
Correct? Yeah.
Yep. They lived under their, and they, I think they tormented them, and they were basically their captives.
They had a battle, their first battle. Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 of them on the battlefield. They were wondering, why did the Lord allow them to defeat us? And they had this idea, you know what? Let us bring the ark of the Lord covenant from Shiloh, so that he may go with us, and save us from the hands of our enemies. God's not speaking to them at this point. Didn't mention that they prayed to God before going into battle. So now they're thinking, if we just bring the ark along, we're good to go.
Well, I think that's important, because it's not mentioned, doesn't mention anything about them praying to God and asking for God. They're bringing the ark, which is, that's not, it's more than that. To win. So go ahead.
They didn't mention faith in there at all. They didn't mention, they just assume, right?
Yeah, we have God with us. That's not the way it works.
Never assume.
Makes an ass out of you and me, right?
So, the ark comes, right? They come with the ark. Eli's 2 sons are there with the ark of the covenant of God. The Philistines they heard about this, and they were afraid. I mean, it actually sent a, shock through the camp. They really thought, oh, we're doomed. We're doomed. Their God is going to, help them defeat us. So the next battle, the Philistines fought, and the Israelites were defeated again. The slaughter was even greater. Israel lost 30,000 foot soldiers. The ark of God was captured, and Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, died. That is in chapter 4, verse 10.
Yep.
Yeah, so much for the ark helping them out.
Yeah, well, there's a very important reason for that, which,
And
go ahead.
Now it's gone.
What's that?
Now it's gone.
Yep. And then so it's interesting, as some of these people escaped, and I'll jump into this next one, and you can add in what I'm lacking. But yeah, a Benjamite, which from the battle had returned to Shiloh, and he told the people, and they cried out. And when they cried out, Eli heard about it, and he asked what the noise and commotion was. and he went over. And the young kid from that escaped went over and told him, and of course Eli's blind now; he can't see, and he's 99.
Mhm.
Man told him what had happened, and when he mentioned the Ark of God, not the two kids, but the Ark of God fell, was taken. He fell backwards and broke his neck, and he
Yeah.
died.
Yeah, that was
So-
all in one sentence. Your two sons are gone, and oh, by the way, the Ark of God was captured.
But
Broke
do you
his neck.
notice that it was the Ark, which is very
Oh,
good.
yeah.
I mean, it's sad as a parent, but in reality, God first, right?
Yeah,
As
God,
as we're
exactly.
learning, as we were learning.
Yeah, the Ark is gone. It had to be an unbelievable shock.
And that's not all. So you want to finish that one?
Yeah, one of the son's wives, Eli's daughter-in-law, the wife of Phineas, she was pregnant in near time of delivery. When she heard the news that the Ark of God had been captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she went into labor and gave birth, but was overcome by her labor pains. As she was dying, the woman attending her said, "Don't despair, you have given birth to a son." But she did not respond or pay any attention. She named the boy Ichabod, which means without glory. Poor kid, got to go through life with that name.
No glory. Yeah, no glory. Come on.
Glory had departed from Israel.
Yeah,
And
so
on
his
okay.
family took a loss. I mean,
Yeah,
just, you know,
God said he's going to punish them, and he's punishing them.
cool.
The Ark
So
in Ashdod and Ekron, chapter 5. You want to add anything else?
no, I just want to mention a cool name where they camped out for the battle, because they bring it up in chapter 5, was the city
Yeah.
called Ebenezer. So I like that
So
name.
before they mentioned that Eli was blind, back up to chapter 4. Right before that, there's a line where he says he's keeping watch. So I was thinking of keeping watch as with your eyeballs, right? But then you go down and it says he's blind. So I guess keeping watch could also be just you're there, you're by the side of the road, you're just aware of your surroundings and whatnot.
Yeah, he's listening. I mean, it watches, he's aware. He can't see it, but he's aware, or trying to be aware.
The Ark in Ashdod and Ekron. So the Philistines had captured the Ark of God. This is verse 5. I'm sorry, chapter 5. They took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod when they carried the Ark into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. Have we ever heard of the god Dagon before?
Yeah, he was in a couple
Okay.
books, or at least, a couple more books before. He is I think the fertility god, the harvest
Okay.
god.
It did ring a bell with me. Okay, so this is the
We called him
Philistine.
Dagon. We
God.
called him Dagon before. So
So they set him in that near Dagon, a statue. And when the people rose the next day, there was Dagon falling on his face on the ground before the Ark of the Lord. Obviously, God took him off.
Yeah, so I'm gonna add a little bit of background to this, that if you do all the index referencing, and I know because I read the Bible for Dummies part, because I'm starting to enjoy that as well, because it adds stuff that I can understand.
Yeah.
The significance of them bringing it into that to Dagon's or Dagon's temple.
Yeah.
Just superiority, or their God was better, right? But
Mhm.
done crap for these people. They bring in the Ark one night, and what happens? So go ahead.
If you worship Dagon and you ask Dagon for things, and Dagon never ever replies or gives you anything, but then you can see that their Lord God and this Ark and what it can do. I don't know, Steve. Just seems like common sense to me. But we move on. So they put him back up on his pedestal. The next day they get up again, and there's Dagon falling on his face on the ground. His head and hands had been broken off and were lying on the threshold. Only his body remained. The Lord's hand was heavy on the people, devastating them, afflicting them with tumors. This is in verse 6. People of Philistines called their leaders and they asked, verse 8, "What shall we do with the Ark of God of Israel?" So they're seeing God's power and they're being punished, and they're ready to get rid of we got to get rid of this thing.
Get this thing out.
What a real God can do.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't say, "Oh, you know what? Maybe we should worship. Maybe we should worship their God. He's got some power."
That's between you calling it Dagon, which I'm not saying you're wrong. I just get a kick out of him because you sounded like the goon. So Dagon, the goon. You're right.
I'm emphasizing too much.
Well, that doesn't matter, but
Mm.
you hit the nail on the head. Come on, guys. This okay, so maybe they just thought it fell over, but the tumors, and then we're gonna learn deaths and stuff from this.
Right.
In this instead of getting rid of it, this maybe we see how we can turn to it and
A little
worship.
different time. Maybe there just wasn't a lot of common sense back then.
That's I'm getting that.
Set,
I'm
set
getting that.
in their ways. Set in their ways. That's that.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All the proof in the world's just not going to sway them. So, okay, so we got to get rid of this thing. So the answer was to move it to Gath, which I'm assuming is another town that's controlled by the Philistines, correct?
Yeah, it was an Israel city, but as we'll learn later on, that they were,
Okay.
but they had taken it over. So yeah, so you're right. It was now captive of the Philippines. Philistines.
Yep. They moved it. Same thing happened. Lord's hand was against the city, afflicting people with tumors. So then they decided to send the ark of God to Ekron. And of course, Ekron's like, well, wait a minute. They've heard about what's going on. We don't want this. We don't want this thing here. It's going to kill us. So the rulers of the Philistines finally, after 7 months, said, and this is verse 11, send the ark of the God of Israel away. Let it go back to its own place or it will kill us and our people. So finally they smartened up and said, okay, we can't control this thing. So
Yep. And in Ekron, he started killing people too. It wasn't just tumors. We were dying from this. So that's where the deaths come in. So
okay,
not only would it kill it, it was killing them.
gotcha. Yes, okay. The ark returns to Israel. We are on chapter 6. When the ark of the Lord had been in Philistines' territory 7 months, the Philistines called the priests and diviners and said, what shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we should send it back to its place. And they basically answered and said, okay, we can return this to us, but by all means, you need to send us a guilt offering to appease our Lord.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought that was interesting because they were specific.
Very specific about
how do they know about a guilt offering? So that was an interesting thing. No, just mention it. So
yeah. Well, this is the Israelites telling the Philistines, right? Send a guilt offering. Then it would be
so I might have missed that. I thought it was just them discussing amongst themselves.
No, because what happened is in the very first paragraph, Philistines called the priests and asked them what we should do.
Ah, thank you.
So what guilt offering should we send them? They replied, 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats.
Which represent?
Yep, the tumors that God was afflicting, and I guess they had a lot of rats with disease running around.
Well, yeah, but it represents the 5 cities. We only mentioned 3 of them, but it's 5 cities in the 5, the 5 kings, I think, that, or 5 cities at least, that the God's plagues inflicted.
Because I was going to say, I don't remember them saying anything about rats and disease, but I couldn't figure out. It says it all.
Yeah, also right off the bat, the ark, did you mention it? I apologize if you did. The ark was gone for 7 months. So
7
it
months,
was gone for a little bit. Almost a year. So that's a bit.
Right.
It's a bit.
Had to do a lot of damage at that time. Surprised it took them that long to send it back.
Yeah.
So they're, the priests are telling them, you got to send it back in a very specific way. Hitch cows to a cart. If they have calves, pen the calves. I mean, they go into a lot of detail here.
A lot.
And it goes into, if it goes up to its own territory, this is verse 9, toward Beth Shemesh, then the Lord has brought this great disaster on us. But if it does not, then we will know that it was not his hand that struck us, but that it happened to us by chance.
So what's that? Either I misunderstood it was interesting because it did go there. It went to Beth Shemesh.
It did. Yeah, it did. So we're going to have to, I know that one stumped me too. So we're going to have to do a little more research on that. Maybe somebody out there can help us out and comment. We'd appreciate it.
Yep, that would for sure. Just because,
right? Because the cart carrying the ark did go straight, didn't turn left or right. It said, The cows went straight up to Beth Shemesh. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord together with the chest containing the gold objects and placed them on a large rock. Anything
Which
you
is
want to
it.
add?
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, the large rock that coincidentally they stop right in front of a large rock, which, as we know, altars are usually a large rock. So, and we'll learn that, yes. Yeah, so that from there, like I said, the priest took the chest of gold, the large rock, they offered burnt offerings, they took the cows and they sacrificed them as burnt offerings.
Yep.
And meanwhile, the five rulers, so yeah, I was right about the king. So there's five lands and five rulers. So of the
Mhm.
Philistines,
I see what you're
they witnessed this, they watched this, and then they returned home to Ekron. The gold tumors are from the five cities, and this is where we mention it, and I will read them: Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. So we didn't mention those other two until just now. So
Right.
they-
And they each had their own leader. They each had their own king. Not really sure.
yeah, I think a leader of the towns for outside of the Israelites were kings, as we will allude to in this before this chapter is over. But yeah, it's interesting too that the Levites came in, but I think some shenanigans went on because God struck down 70 people of Beth Shemesh for looking into the ark.
Yeah, I
So-
guess they either the Israelites have been taught, you don't look into this thing, you'll what burn up instantly. Maybe they didn't know, but some of them took a peek, and it was about 70. It said,
We saw Indiana Jones,
right.
which one was it? The Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Look away, don't look
Yeah,
at
don't
it.
look at it. Whatever you do, don't look at that. Don't look at it. So, yep. We digress.
Verse 21. Then they sent messengers to the people of Kereth Drum, saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to your town."
Exactly, because they wanted him to come get it because it killed people too. It's like, hey, we're not gonna, we're not taking it anymore. We
You
don't know
pass
how
it
it's gonna-
on. Nice neighbors. Pass this on to your neighbors. So they brought the ark to Abinadab's house on the hill, consecrated Eliezer, his son, to guard the
Eliezer.
ark of the Lord.
Yep, Eliezer.
Eliezer, and it remained there for 20 years. So this kid he has to guard the ark. Does just have to stand by this thing 24/7 or what?
I think guarding it is a mean of the rules we learned in Numbers and Deuteronomy, what it meant to do. So he was anointed to
Right.
watch over, to be
Because you're not supposed to get within a certain distance of the ark anyways.
Yep.
From what we read before. So, but I guess he was able to. So Samuel subdues the Philistines of Mizpah.
Mizpah.
Then the other people of Israel turned back to the Lord. Oh, they're going back, Steve. So Samuel said to all the Israelites, verse 3, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your hearts, then rid yourselves of the foreign gods and the Ashtoreths, and commit yourself to the Lord and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hands of the Philistines." So they did. They listened. They're ready to go back to the Lord. Samuel called everybody together at Mizpah. He said, "I will intercede, the Lord for you.
Exactly.
We have sinned against the Lord." Now Samuel serving as leader of Israel at Mizpah. Verse 7, Philistines heard that Israel had assembled at Mizpah. So what they decide to do?
Yep. They're like, well, we're gonna nip this in the bud. And we're
Yeah,
gonna go.
time for another battle. They said to
That's-
Samuel, the Israelites said to Samuel in verse 8, they said to Samuel, "Do not cry out to the Lord. Do not stop crying out to the Lord our God for us, that he may rescue us from the hand of the Philistines." Now they're going to go into battle and they're asking for help, praying for help.
Well, just add a little bit of commentary there. Well, they just got their butts kicked in all the other battles, right? And what is the point to me is God wasn't with them. So continue.
wisen up. Verse 10, while Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offerings, the Philistines drew near to engage Israel in battle. But that day the Lord thundered with loud thunder against the Philistines and threw them into such panic that they were rooted before the Israelites.
Yes, they were.
So they didn't even win the battle. The Lord took care of it.
Exactly. And they pursued them. Israel pursued them out of Mizpah. And then it does mention, and this is, I believe, verse 9, chapter 7. Israel pursued them out of Mizpah, slaughtering them along the way to a point below Bethkar. And then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shen and named it Ebenezer. And that means stone of help. So that's why I like the name Ebenezer. So
the Philistines were subdued and they stopped invading Israel's territory. Throughout Samuel's life, the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines. The towns from Ekron and Gath that the Philistines captured from Israel were restored to Israel. And Israel delivered the neighboring territories from the hands of the Philistines. And there was peace between Israel and the Amorites.
Exactly. That's what I mentioned. So the two towns.
Getting their land back, right? Good things are happening. Why? I think
They're worshiping God. They're following the rules. I mean, this is a tells me. I mean, is they were. Do you remember? It was, I believe, it was in Deuteronomy. Keep these on your lips every day.
Right.
You know, and they're not. What happens when
the roller coaster ride?
Yeah, don't mix with the people of the land. I'm not. At first I'm not gonna shoo them out because the animals take them over, and then they realize God's like, no, I'm gonna use them as the test for you, and they still fail. So it's a constant theme. We've talked about it. You've heard Steve say over and over again. Without God, you need God.
So we're gonna get into chapter 8. Israel asks for a king, and this is going to be our last chapter, and we will stop because again, these videos are getting a little long, and we want to take a little more time to digest, what we're saying. So we've sort of like reached that peak again, right? They're with the Lord, and we're going to start going back down. Chapter 8. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israelis leaders, Joel and Abijah.
Yep. Good job.
But his sons did not follow his ways. Boy, this sounds familiar, right? Eli's sons. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. Not
just
good.
Like Eli's. That's crazy. So, I don't know. Just like Eli.
The people are happy with the leadership. So they said, what, Steve? What'd they say, Steve?
They said, you're growing old. Your sons aren't following in your footsteps. We want a king. Appoint a king to rule over us.
They already have a king. But they want a king like all the other nations have.
Yes, they can have somebody go to battle with them. And and this is extremely significant. Not only is Samuel upset, he's pissed off. But God is like, I just showed you. Samuel wasn't, I just conquered this for you. You didn't have to do anything until they started, until they started fleeing, and then you were able to go ahead and subdue them.
Right. They were given into your hands. You just had to finish them off.
They want a king
that can lead them into battle. And he's
going to take the best of everything, right? Which they're already giving to the God. Now they have to give them the best to the king too.
Yeah. Were there ever any kings back then that were kind and generous and, fed his people? And no, that just didn't exist.
Nope. At least what we've learned this far. Now they always corrupt. So, so this is, they asked for the kings. And Samuel went to God, and he's like, what do I do? God's like, give him a king. And they explain all that stuff. And, and so he went back, God told Samuel, let the people know all that a king will take best of everything, etc. And then he told them, and they're like, no, we want a king to rule over us. So he gave them another chance, saying, look, hey, this is from God. So
this is not going to be great for you, and it's not going to end well. And they said, when this day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. So
it's crazy. It's crazy. So
foretelling them this is going to happen, and this is what your punishment will be.
and they're not listening. I don't understand it. I don't understand it all. No, I mean, again, it kind of paraphrase or not paraphrasing, but today even, we don't live perfect lives. We don't, again, we've said this, we don't walk and talk with God, but they did, especially at least Samuel did, and he shared it with it, and things happened. So yeah, they want a king, and that's that. We'll learn about that king. It starts out like all kings do, great,
Yes.
but not so much.
Little teaser. Their first king's name will be Saul. So if anybody wants to read ahead or, look up Saul, feel free, and you'll have a little jump on it. The very end of the chapter, when Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. Verse 22, the Lord answered, listen to them and give them a king. And Samuel said to the Israelites, everyone go back to your own towns. That's where it ends.
Yep. And
that was good. I'm glad we chose to end it there. I think, because we still have how many more chapters to go if we went up to 15. So that's good. I think that worked out well. So I hope
cool.
that helps everybody else too. These aren't, these getting a little too long. So we're going to end it here. Steve,
Randy,
nice to see you again. Miss
you
you, buddy.
well. Cheers.
Cheers, man.
You all come back now, you hear?
We'll see you next time.